Hello goons and gals, I welcome you to today's video where I will attempt to answer the greatest question of all time. Which is the better bike to own? An ADV bike or a dual sport? Which one is the perfect unicorn and which bike is the best for you? Now I will do my very best to answer that question, but please let me remind you, before we start, I do know what is very good for you. Probably the best thing for you, and that's to subscribe to this channel. So please, subscribe. Subscribe. Come on, man, you're holding us up. Okay, goons and gals, let me do my very best to take a stab at trying to answer that all-important question. That question that gets us riders one step closer to the perfect unicorn motorcycle. Which one is better to own? If you could only own one, is it a dual sport or is it an ADV bike? Now, certainly over the last half decade, we've seen a lot of advancements in both of these sectors. And we've certainly seen a lot of YouTube videos where there have been a lot of dirt bike riders that have done some fancy stuff, like Tony Boo and Paul Taurus on these ADV bikes. Looks really cool. But is that even something that's realistic? And we've certainly seen a lot of YouTube videos where they've taken these bikes and turned it into some sweet looking adventure motorcycles. Because we're all in the attempt of that one perfect bike that we can own. Now, to answer this question, we first want to take a look at what really is an ADV bike, an adventure bike, and what really is a dual sport bike. Because if we're just using words, they're both adventure bikes because they both produce a lot of adventure. They're also both dual sports because they can do multiple things well. But which one is the right one for you? Now, let's answer a question here real quickly. What is actually an ADV bike and what is a dual sport? A lot of riders feel that this is CC or engine size related, and it's not really. Now, this is not biblically written in stone. This is just the goon's personal opinion. But the way I look at it is this. The difference between an ADV and a dual sport is its origin. Where did it originally come from? Dual sports originate from trail bikes or dirt bikes. That's their true intentions. And many of the motorcycles, the dual sports today, are carbon copies of manufacturers' race bikes, such as this 450RL, which is a carbon copy of CRF 450R race bike with a detuned motor and a couple of other EPA emissions things on it. Its true intentions and its origin is to just give you a dirt bike with just enough modifications from the factory to pass EPA and be street legal in 50 states, the bare minimum. Whereas an ADV bike is the complete opposite. Its origin is a road bike. It's meant to do long highway miles, but it's given just enough modifications from the factory to make it, let's say, dirt worthy. And that's the two main differences. So any CC bike could be an adventure bike and any CC bike could be a dual sport bike, but the true purpose of a dual sport is off-road oriented and an ADV bike is street oriented. Now that brings us to the question of which one is better for you. Now there's a way we want to look at this, as with all motorcycles, and that's intention versus reality. What is your true intentions to use this bike? Now some of us are lucky and we buy a bike for the right intentions and we use it for those intentions. Then sometimes we buy a bike and we have the right intentions, but then we end up having a different reality. So we'll talk about both of those sides. For me, I want to start out with intention versus reality because I bought this Tiger here to do long distance rides. I wanted to get out there and just ride around the Southwest, go 100, 200 miles off the road. And that's what this bike was built for. And I did do that to some degree, but that wasn't a normality for me. Most of the time, I was just riding it from my house to the nearest trail. And the more aggressive I came with this bike, if you've watched this channel, you've seen tons of these videos. I got this bike into some serious situations, and it's just not built for that. It's too heavy, it's too cumbersome, it doesn't have the ground clearance. There's all kinds of things we can talk about here in just a second. So I felt this was the better way to go. Now maybe it's the other way around, that you buy a smaller bike because you are intimidated by a bigger bike, but then you realize this thing is way too small, it's too buzzy on the freeway. So when we think about that, if you're one of those riders out there that your primary use is going to be road oriented, this is probably going to be the better choice because it's built for the road. You could obviously tell that. You have a windscreen to make it nice and comfy as you're going down the freeway. Many of these newer adventure bikes, you have nice fancy TFT displays, traction control, rider modes, heated seats, heated grips, place for a passenger, place to carry luggage, large fuel capacity so you can go several miles off the grid without having to worry about fuel. But obviously its downfall off-road is its bulk and obviously its weight. Because if you tip this bike over, it takes an awful lot of work trying to pick it up. And I've been in several situations where I've wasted several hours of my riding time trying to get this bike just up off of the ground by myself. So you have to take that into consideration. What is your motive? Now, on the other hand here, this bike is phenomenal off-road. If you're an off-road enthusiast and you're going to do a lot of riding off-road, this is obviously your choice. But to where this one falters off-road, this one seriously falters on the road. Because it's a single-cylinder engine, even though there's been a lot of advancements in technology, a bike like this still is buzzy down the freeway. Now, it will cruise 70 miles an hour as this one will, but it certainly doesn't feel anywhere near the Tiger. You have concrete here for a seat. You have no wind protection. You have no cruise control, no heated grips, no heated seats, no place to keep a passenger unless they want their legs flapping in the back. There's no luggage rack unless you want to put one on it. And the bike is just basically off-road focused. So the question becomes, which one could you move into the middle? Can you make one of these motorcycles fit exactly what you're doing and create the quote-unquote unicorn bike? I would look at it this way, which I mentioned in my first impressions of this motorcycle. To me, which is only my opinion, it's far easier to take this type of a motorcycle and try to move it more roadworthy than it is normally to take this type of motorcycle and make it more dirt worthy. And the reason for that is because of its weight. No matter what you do, there's only so much weight you can cut from this Tiger. Now I know there's a lot more aggressive off-road bikes like the KTM 890 or the Yamaha Tenere, you got the new Aprilia Touareg and so on. But no matter what modifications you make here, it's much more difficult to reduce the weight from this bike. There's only so much you can shave. Here, there's a lot of the stuff that you can buy, fairings, you can buy luggage racks, you can buy other kind of modifications to make it smoother on the street, such as the fueling, the exhaust. You can add heated grips, you can add heated seats, you can get upgraded seats and everything else in between. Now that's obviously expensive, so there is another part that you will have to weigh on your own. Is it worth that money? Because this motorcycle in its new format will probably run you $15,000 to $16,000, maybe even a little more. Some of these can run upwards of 20 if you're talking like a GS or even higher. Or a bike like this is roughly 11 to 12. But you may have to put $3,000 to $4,000 worth of modifications in this to get it to be as comfortable as you want on the road. And maybe you'll have to put 3,000 modifications more on this to get it to where you want it as well. So money is always an issue. So to answer that question, you first have to sit down and ask yourself, what truly, and don't lie to yourself, like what really kind of riding are you doing? If you're not doing any serious off-roading, and when I'm talking serious off-roading, rocks, I'm talking like rock crawling, single track, tight single track, aggressive hill climbing, you don't need one of these. You can do fire roads or even some mild single track. You can do plenty of off-roading on that. So if you're not going to be aggressive with your off-roading, I think this is a better choice because what it sacrifices off-road, it more than makes up. This is a bike that you can use as a sole piece of transportation, which I do now. It's easy to carry a passenger on. It's smooth, it's buttery smooth down the freeway. It's nice on a cool day to have those heated grips. The seat's nice and cushy. It's got heat on it too for your bum. It's a beautiful motorcycle. It's so smooth you can just sit back, hit the cruise control and plug out 500 miles. You can't do that on this one. This thing, like I said, is like sitting on a block of concrete on top of a washing machine sometimes. Now, if you're somebody that's more aggressive, and again, that's me, I'm more aggressive off-road. That doesn't mean I'm better off-road. It just means I'm stupid off-road. I'm a goon, right? I'm more aggressive off-road. This is a better choice for me because my intentions now are to get from the house to the nearest trail and then do more. And since owning this bike, for me, it has been better because It makes me better off-road. What I'm able to do on this bike, I could only dream of on this bike. There were several trails I got on, and I just turned around because I was intimidated. I'm like, I don't want to pick this bike up on my own. I don't want to go down that hill on my own. No one's here to help me. I don't want to have to waste any more time with this bike. It's too intimidating. Here, I'll easily do it because I don't worry about having to pick that bike up. Now, certainly I'll sacrifice a lot on the freeway, and sometimes, 25 minutes down the road on this seems like that. 25 minutes on this feels like 2 hours. It is buzzy. It is vibrating. But with a few $1,000s of modifications on it, which is not cheap, obviously, I feel I can make this bike much more fitting to what it is I am doing. So goons and gals, that's the question you have to ask yourself with all bikes, whether they're ADV bikes, dual sports, race bikes, street bikes, cafes, nakeds, Harleys, they're all out there. You have to decide what you really, really want and be honest with yourself on what kind of bike you really want, what fits your lifestyle, what's going to be the bike you're going to get the most out of. Because fortunately, I'm okay to keep both of these, but not everybody is. And that's something that you have to decide which one's better. But if I had to choose, this one's better for me right now. Also, you could put supermoto wheels on this. Okay, anyway, guys, thanks for watching very much. I do appreciate it. As always, what I said today is just my opinion only, and I could be wrong.